This is the second part of the week 12 video lecture. We're going to talk about all the images that are required for P4 and how you and your group are going to create each one of them. So instead of clicking on understanding concepts, I'm going to finish with presentation and then go back to the module to look at the assignments. Okay. So in the first part of week 12's understanding concepts, I suggested hosting a third meeting. And this was for you and group members to discuss the ins and outs of the various visuals for P4. Knowing who will complete which visual is important and part of what you should know before completing the image design analysis assignment or the day 2 assignment. Project 4 is an interactive report with several elements, including static and dynamic images. When reviewing the assignment guidelines, you'll realize there's a total of 5 static or non-moving and 1 dynamic or moving visual. Each group member should be completing 2 or 3 parts of the P4 report, and that means more than one person is going to have to complete a visual more likely than not. So details about the visual requirements and expectations for P4 include captions according to MLA or APA standards. Majority of the P4 visuals should be created by someone in the group unless otherwise stated. That's completely important. Of almost every single visual requirement, you need to create it yourself. And again, a static image is a non-moving image like a photo chart or graph. Aerial photo or map of the particular area you're discussing or that you download from the internet, it's okay if you don't create the aerial photo map. So a team created data visualization that illustrates stats concerning the problem. Having more than one of these is okay, but you should create it. One photograph or clip art depicting the solution. This can be from Google, but it should be from Wiki Commons or Pixabay for copyright purposes. And then you should have what's at the bottom here, the black image there, a Gantt chart, and it's a schedule that tells your imagined higher authority, your boss, it tells them what you're gonna need to complete for your solution and when you're gonna complete it. So it's not, what are you gonna do for project 4 for school? You're still pretending you're a company and you're completing a project and what needs to be completed. And that's what the Gantt chart does. And then you need an image of a team created budget that uses Excel, Canva, or some other program to create it. And here's the password for the day 2 assignment that you'll need to enter. And so for the dynamic image, it's a moving image, and that means it's a video. And after the introduction, the P4 report should move on to a dynamic video that illustrates the explanation of the problem or the need, causes of the problem or the need, and details of the solution. The video has to be original. You can see from this example, this is like a still screenshot from a student video from another P4 report. You can't give me a link from a reposted video on the internet or from YouTube. That's not what I want. Somebody in the group has to create the video. It should be short, 1 minute or less, because people don't care to watch a really long video about your pitch, about your problem. And overall, the visuals of the report should be seamlessly integrated, and they should make sense to the topic, purpose, and the audience. Again, I mentioned that the Gantt chart that you have to create, it's to depict the imaginary tasks to implement the solution. Super important. I always get one group that didn't review the readings or the lecture materials, and they submit a Gantt chart for the project 4 tasks. and they're telling me who on this chart, who's going to submit the revision slides and who's going to do the final draft and shit I don't care about. So what does the group need to do, and when do they need to do it to accomplish the group goal of solving the problem? So, I mean, you should designate someone to take notes during this next team meeting and create an informal list, like who in the group could complete each task. You're pretending and imagining which sequence should the task be completed in, and the Gantt chart should illustrate week-to-week tasks, or, I mean, it can be month-to-month if that works, or it can be year-to-year if your topic is, or your problem is really full-blown and it can't be solved really quickly. You should designate someone to look up samples and templates, and designate someone to start creating the chart based on these notes. Your group's recommendation report needs to include a budget. It should discuss particulars, or you can discuss the particulars of the budget as a group, but one person's responsible for completing and attaching this to the report. A good budget's easy to read. It clearly relays incoming and outgoing funds. I need to know what money you started out with and what money you're gonna be the outgoing funds. Otherwise, it's really a worthless budget. You can't just give me a list of kind of, we're gonna buy this, this, and this. I need to know the revenue and net income, very important parts. You should first research similar problems in companies and look for public budgets that you can mimic. Then decide with your group on some of the expenses and income concerns. You can create the budget however you'd like, but make sure it's clear, it's not too big, and it shouldn't require tons of scrolling or be the focus of the report. And there's so many apps you can use to create it, like Excel, Word, Canva, Paint. If you type in budget apps on your Google Play or iStore, I'm sure something will come up. And there's also a video on creating a budget found on the Understanding Concepts page of the W12. Report. And you've done this before, but again, it just should look like the first one you turned in, even though somebody else in the group most likely is turning this in. They need to look at the first group progress report, hit up the person that first created it and say, hey, can I, take a look so I can see the template that you used, and they're all gonna look the same. Unless I gave that first person feedback and I was like, this is not great, or it looks like an essay, it doesn't look like a report, and then you need to make the second one better because you want a better grade, right? Image design analysis, probably one of the most confusing assignments, and I'm going to try to break it down because it's hard for students to understand that you need to create essentially this assignment is create a visual for project 4 that can be used. Of those visuals, you get to choose from one of these. And so that you're not wasting your time and your group's time, you should, even though it's an individual assignment, you should talk to your teammates and see what they're creating so that 2 of you then don't go and create a Gantt chart when you only need 1. So to make that clearer, when you are having your team meeting, however you do that, even if it's via text, and say these are your teammates, Amanda, and so on, and you have 5 teammates, you should know by the end of that meeting who is responsible for what static or dynamic visual in the report. And we know that, because I keep saying it, there's 5 static images. There's 1 dynamic. So there's 6 to take care of, even though I said you have to pick from here. Essentially, there's 6 that you could pick from for that assignment. And everyone in the group should be creating something different. And maybe Amanda decides I'm going to do the Gantt chart. Budget here. And image depict solution. This can be obtained and really is one of the only things that someone doesn't have to create. So if you have someone on your team and they're not great at creating images or they really just don't want to, this is probably the thing that they'll want to pick to then finish this individual assignment. Data visualization. Maybe someone doesn't want to do the video right now because that's kind of too hard. And they're going to do the aerial map, and you can either find one on Google and screenshot it, or you can create one of your own using Google or Tweet. So you meet with your team and you kind of make a plan, but this does not mean you completed 12.2. That means then Amanda knows she's going to create a Gantt chart and she's going to go back by herself to complete 12.2 and do part 1, part 2, 3, 4, 5 on her own, hitting reply in the discussion forum, not worrying about MLA or APA formatting, and trying to avoid attaching her Gantt chart because it's best if you save the image to your desktop or wherever, and then you instead embed it or you upload it as an image here, because then everyone can see it a lot easier that way. And then when you and your group go back to review who did what, and you're throwing it together for your project for recommendation report, it's going to be easier to find it that way too, maybe, or just look back on what you did and fix it. So Amanda knows she has to create the Gantt chart as part of part 2. And then part 3 is answering these questions. And they look really similar because you did this same kind of thing for project 2 when you had to create an image. Except now you also have to include the password that we saw in the slideshow. And you're making sure to post it here and hit reply. Noting that you've answered 1 through 5 in complete sentences. And I'm having you do this not to just consider your image, but because every image for project 4 needs some text to kind of anchor it and give it context. And so you're writing part of the report too. When you're creating this image and you're answering these questions about your own image, you're completing image analysis, context, which is needed for the report. And then during your next team meeting, you're gonna kind of chat with each other. The 4th team meeting where you're creating that rough draft, you're gonna say, can we use the Gantt chart that Amanda made, or does she need to make another one? Is the budget okay? Leo went to Pixabay to try to find an image that really kind of speaks to the solution, but somebody else found a better one and we're going to use that one. But for any image that you decide to create, you have to remember to add a caption to it that adheres to MLA or APA standards. And if you don't remember how to do that, go back to, it's probably one of the project 2 modules where it's in understanding concepts, and it has those examples on how to create an MLA or APA caption. So don't forget the caption, because if you do, you'll lose some points, and those are easy points, really. This is due by April 4th. And again, just because you chat with your team about it, you're still on the hook for completing all of it on your own, whether you speak to your group or not. But it really helps to speak to your group. And that's it for week 12.